guys, welcome to my new office. I've shot a bunch of short videos here, but this is my new office in our new home here in Massachusetts, and I'm so excited to be back with a longer format video for you guys. Um, Sorry, goodness. Apparently I forgot how to YouTube while I was gone. Anyway, so today I thought we would talk. So it's the 18th of November. And if you've been watching my shorts, then you know that I've been participating in NaNoWriMo, which is short for National Novel Writing Month, if you're not familiar. And it's basically a writing challenge where you challenge yourself to write 50,000 words in 30 days. Spoiler alert, I did it. I finished it. I finished 2 nights ago. I took a rest day yesterday, and I will talk a little bit more about that later in the video. But I've been keeping, doing my updates with the short videos, and I will. But I wanted to do a little bit longer video to talk about like the whole NaNoWriMo experience and why it worked for me this year and why it didn't work for me in past years, because I've done it before. I've won it twice before in 2007, 2008, but then I haven't won it since then until this year. So winning NaNoWriMo is when you successfully complete the goal of writing 50,000 words in 30 days. A little caveat there, though, is just because you can win Nano does not mean it's possible to lose Nano. Okay. And I have a whole one of my short videos focuses entirely on that. Any writing that you do is good. It's even if you don't end up keeping the words, you've progressed, you've advanced, you've figured out what you want to do with your story. So Nano can be kind of fraught sometimes because it's that pressure and those deadlines and stuff. So we're going to talk about that too. But first, let's talk about my own experiences. So I'm going to switch real quick to the show you guys the NaNo website and what what my progress looked like. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at my NaNoWriMo dashboard. Sorry, this is the second time recording this part as well. So this has been a learning experience for all of us. Okay, but here we are on my NaNoWriMo dashboard. One quick note, I can see the preview of the screen, but I have to manipulate it over here. So if I keep turning my head, that's why. Sorry, again, learning experience. Okay. This is actually the stats page of my NaNoWriMo dashboard, but I wanted to show you a couple of things. So the way that Nano sets this up, this line here is their path to success line. If you write, 1,667 words per day, you will write your 50th word on November 30th. Okay. That's sort of how they figured it out, right? They take 30 days or 50,000 words, they divide it by 30, and they get 1667. So that's their par. And a lot of people are successful with making that their target word count for every day, because a lot of times you go over your target, right? And so it's like, yay, you've done more. And so if you do less, it's not as big a deal. I utilized a version of that same sort of concept with some modifications. And the genius, it's very simple, but this genius, I have to give credit to influencer and writer Sarah Cannon, who she's here on YouTube. She's got a phenomenal channel full of great writing content and productivity content, and kind of a beautiful fusion of the two that she shares online. She's amazing. She's full of resources. She's got a great community. So go check out her link in the description below. But Sarah, one of the things that she does Nano every year. She has this great series called the NaNoWriMo Diaries, where she does vlogs of her Nano experience. So again, go check that out. But the other thing that she does is she participates in Preptober, which is a thing that a lot of writer YouTubers will do, where they kind of document how they prepare for this big writing challenge of NaNoWriMo. And during her Preptober videos, one of the things that she's very big on is make a realistic plan for yourself. And I'm going to show you after this portion of the video is done, we're going to take a top down look at my planner so I can show you how that manifested for me and how that was really motivating and worked out well for me. But the key, the key here is that word realistic. So I have never been able to spend 30 straight days writing at a consistent pace because I'm a mom and I had a job and I have a family and I have a life and I have a body that sometimes doesn't feel good and things of that nature, right? Life happens is the point. And so for me at least, it's not realistic to expect a steady output of 1667 words every single day, especially not this month, right? I just moved into a new house. I talked about this in the intro. I wasn't even going to do Nano this month because of all the things going on in my life. So when I decided to do it, I knew that I had to do it in a realistic fashion. And part of that is accepting that there will be days when I will not get my butt in the chair and my hands on the keyboard, days when I will get 0 words. For example, on the 5th of this month, I spent 12 hours in the car driving from Virginia back here to Massachusetts to come home. There was no way I was writing after that, right? Or before that, it was just not realistic, right? It was just not something that I personally could accomplish. So I needed to take that into account. And I'm going to show you how exactly I did that again during the overhead portion. But basically what it came down to is I knew that I could only really realistically write for about 21 days this month. So I divided my 50,000 words by 21 days and came up with an entirely different number, which was 2381. So 2,381 words per day. If I did 2,381 words per day on every day every day of those 21 writing days that I had kind of progged out, then I would write my 50,000th word on the 30th of November. So that was my par. And you can see that having that goal put me ahead of this curve early and kept me ahead of the curve as I continued making progress. Okay. Most of those days, I wrote significantly more than that. And part of that was, again, where I was in the story. I was near the end. It's always a lot of fun to write that part for me. I feel a lot of motivation and drive. And part of it was the way that I was writing with the cooperative sprints online, the challenging each other, and but in a fun way, right? Not like, oh, I'm better than you, but more of a, hey, let's do this together. You're doing great. How many did you get? You got this much. That's awesome. I got this much. It's also awesome. That sort of thing. That's what works for me, right? No, no shade if you're the kind of person who feels more motivated by like friendly competition. Good on you. Do that. If that's what works for you, do that. This is what worked for me. Okay. So a couple of notes here. This first day, my count was only 1517. Again, I decided to start NaNoWriMo at like 9 p.m. on November 1st. And it was very much a capricious decision on my part. I was like, you know what? I'm within touching distance of finishing these 2 stories. F it. Let's do this. I'm in. I'm all in. And so I figured out my word count and I got started. And I fell short of that word count on the very first day. But because I had planned in buffer days, because I knew that I had a realistic word count day or realistic word count for my writing days, I knew that I could make that up the next day. And in fact, that's what I did, right? You can see the 2 0 days that I got, but even with those 0 days, come up here and look up here. You can see I was still well above the NaNoWriMo par, and I was still even above my par. And I'll show you that when I show you my planner too. And then you can see, the momentum of the story just kept me going forward. The momentum of the story, the momentum of writing with my friends, my new friends that I just met that day on on these live YouTube streams, and friends that I've known for years, that I've written with for years on, kind of in our CKP writing community. So yeah, that's sort of how that went. Right here in the middle, even, I had a 513 word day, and that was okay because on that day, November the 8th, again, I was still ahead of my not only Nano's par, but my own par. And that to me was a very comforting feeling. So I guess the bottom line here is if I want to look at what my success factors were, one of them was planning that realistic writing plan of knowing that I had buffer days, that I had the words for those days accounted for on other days, and um, and being able to feel good and go forward and not feel stressed and pressured like, oh my god, I got to make my word count, because I was like, okay, I'm in a good spot, right? I'm in a good position. That was one big success factor. The other big success factor, like I said, was sprinting with friends on these days that I got. This day here, November 11th, Veterans Day, which was a great day actually. A friend of mine, Jamie Ibsen, another writer, we sprinted together, and he got 5,000 words. I got 6,000 words. And it was incredibly motivating to like encourage each other and push each other. So sprinting with friends was a big deal. Also, side note, previous to this, my favorite like sprinting time had been about 20 minutes with a 10-minute break. But because I started sprinting online with the Heart Breathings writing community, which again, that's Sarah Cannon's writing community that she started. They do sprints every single day, you guys, online live on YouTube, and you can just go and join in, write with them for 25 minutes, and then chat in the. You might have to subscribe in order to chat, just as a safety feature, but chat in the comments during the breaks, and it's incredibly motivating and incredibly positive experience, and a huge factor in why I was able to put up so many of these big numbers. But the 25 minutes, that's the side note, right? So on an average 20-minute sprint, I would usually get about 500 words on average, maybe a little more. But for a 25-minute sprint, I was getting like 700 to 800 words, like it was wild how much of a difference that extra 5 minutes benefited me. So if you are a sprinter, and you're looking to increase your word count, I'd say play around with the length of your sprint, and see, try longer sprints, try some shorter sprints, see what works out best for you. So there you go. Um, this little night owl guy kind of just made me laugh here because I'm pretty sure the reason that was the case is because I was most often updating at the end of the day, because I would write throughout the day, and I would update, and so it would see that like, oh yeah, you do most of your writing between 9 and 10 p.m. That was not necessarily the case, except for this day right here on the 16th. On the 16th, I got 8,357 words. That is correct. That is how many I had by midnight. Right around midnight, I hit 50,000 and was like, woohoo, I won Nano. But the book wasn't done. And I was right there at the end. And it was so much fun, you guys. It was intrinsically motivating because I wanted to see how it ended. I knew how it was supposed to end, but I wanted to see how it came together, how it flowed, what the exact words were. I was reading it as I was writing it. And it's very weird to that's a weird concept, and it's kind of hard to explain, but like I had it plotted. I knew what was going to happen, but I wanted to see it, right? I wanted to finish it, and I wanted to say the end, and I wanted to say Mage Light is done. The first draft of Mage Light is done. It's awesome. And it is, and I love it. And maybe that's arrogant, but it is. It's awesome. You guys are really gonna like it. So I kept going. And again, I'll show you the ridiculousness that was my planner page for that day too in the when we get to the top down overhead view. But after midnight, I wrote 3,000 more words. And then I basically collapsed. Went to bed at like 2:30 and slept in and did nothing the next day, because you can surge. There's nothing wrong with surging occasionally, but you've got to rest and recover afterwards. And so my rest and recovery day was yesterday, and I'm filming this video today. But yes, so that is that's a look at what my sort of nano journey looked like. And now we'll go ahead and we'll switch to the planner view, and I'll show you kind of how that individually manifested for me. If I can figure out how to stop this part. Okay, we're gonna try this again. I tried to record this and well, failed. So anyway, here's attempt 2 at showing you my planner. So in case you're curious what I use, this is mostly an A5, Erin Condren A5 Rings agenda. This is their like harbor focused agenda. I have a couple of them, and I use their daily pages, but this is the monthly spread that comes with it. I also want to give a quick shout out to Sarah Cannon and her HB90 system, which is the system that I use. I have only printed the weekly pages and the planning pages because I do have these daily pages through the end of this year. But her system is the one that I'm going to be using going forward in 2024. And if you're interested in seeing a video about that or learning more about the system that I use and why it works for me, let me know in the comments because I'd be more than happy to make a video about that for you. So, but right now we're going to talk about NaNoWriMo. So I mentioned the whole calculating par thing. If you look at my calendar, you can see that I have plans, right? Like most people do. On Saturday the 4th, I went to Busch Gardens. Sunday the 5th, I drove home. Got this whole thing going on down here with Thanksgiving. 2 days of flying, you know, some holiday time. I knew that I was not going to write on those days, right? So 1667 a day, including those days, wasn't going to work for me. I mean, I spent, 12 plus hours in the car on the 5th. There was no way I was getting any words that day, right? But I knew that. And the brilliance of Sarah's plan is that she encourages you to incorporate that knowledge. So this is kind of what I did. I figured that, 30 days, half November, right? Minus 9 0 and buffer days. Okay, so where'd that number come from? Well, 1 day for Busch Gardens, 1 day for driving home. That's 2. 2 days on an airplane. That's 4. Thanksgiving is 5. And then I also added a couple of buffer days for days that I just knew I would not. Well, I didn't know that I wouldn't be able to write on those days. In fact, I did write on the 10th. I wrote a lot on the 10th. But I wanted to make sure that I had a little bit of, buffer in case something happened, right? You get sick, your kid gets sick. You get a bunch of calls from work that you can't, that you can't get away from. You've got a sudden repair at home or you just don't feel like it that day, right? Like you don't have the energy, you didn't get good sleep. And so you need to rest. By incorporating days that I knew, by incorporating intentional 0 days, I knew that if any of those things happened to me, I would be okay because the words that I would have otherwise gotten on those days were already accounted for on my writing days, right? So I figured about 9 days total of no writing would be a good wag for me. It really was a wag. But that gave me 21 good solid writing days. That came out to about 2381 words per day, which is pretty doable for me, right? I also figured out that at 500 words per sprint, and this is an average, I actually ended up doing a lot more than that because I was doing longer sprints, but at 500 words per sprint, that ends up being 5 sprints per day. Will cover the 2381. It'll actually be obviously, 2,500 words per day, but whatever. So you get the gist, right? So that was sort of my mental benchmark for how I was going to, attack this NaNoWriMo problem. Not that it was a problem, but you know what I'm saying. All right, so this is how I did it day to day. And you can see it kind of took me a couple days to figure out, all right, how do I want to do this? But on the first day, started out with 0 words, ended with 1,500. That put me at my delta of, about 800 words behind. But again, no big deal because I could go and make that up on the next day. The final sort of matured look at how I ended up tracking it. Like I said, this process sort of developed throughout the month. But this is a good example of the days, of how the process ended up working. So every day I'd go sit down and I'd write down, okay, this is what I started with. I would make a spot for what I would, how many I would get that day. The sum of those two equals this. As you can see, I made a couple of errors, which is fine, right? The need here, or later on I call it pace, is how many words, if I kept my 21-day pace up, how many words should I have on that day? So you can see on the 6th, it was 9,794. I was actually well ahead of that, which is awesome. So my delta was a positive number. And since the second, I was able to keep that delta a positive number, which was really intrinsically motivating to me because it made me feel like, okay, I've got room, I've got space, I'm ahead of the game. I can, I don't have to stress about making up words anymore. I've got words in the bank, as it were. I would also track my individual sprints, and this view down here is probably a better one. I would track, I'd have my little tick box so that I could tick off my tick off my stuff. And then I would do individually, I would mark down, okay, this is how many I got per the sprint. This is how many I got for the day. So you can see that number gets higher. And then this nano total was what was that sprint added to whatever I went into it with. So that's how it ended up working out. And that, like I said, in and of itself was very, very intrinsically motivating. As we got closer and closer, you could see, I started putting up some really big numbers, felt really good about that. Some of these sprints, man, like 791 words on a sprint. That was one of those awesome 25-minute sprints. It was great. And then the 16th happened. This is where I won, but also I want to caution you about stuff like this, right? The only reason I was able to do this was because I was at the end of my book. I was pushing towards the end. I was riding that adrenaline wave of, writing the big confrontation and getting all the things resolved. And I was so close to the end, and I wanted to wrap it up. I wanted to finish it. So as you can see, I started out, I did 10 sprints that day, and then I ran out of room. So I started up and I kept going. About midnight, I hit 50,000. Which was great. And I was very excited, and I highlighted it, and it was very cool. But then the book wasn't done, and I was so close to finishing it. And I've been working on this book, and I really love it, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm very excited to bring it to you guys. So I kept going. So I finished at about 2:30 in the morning. I put up 53,693 as my final nano total. And the book itself is done at about 106,000 words. So this, however, is not normal ops, right? This is surging. This is, I feel energized. I feel alive. I got to get it done because I want to get it done. Do not make the mistake. If this is something that you do not make the mistake of feeling like this is what you should do on a normal basis. That's not how this works, right? My normal basis was all this stuff back here. All this stuff back here, where I'm writing, well, those are big days. So that's not even normal. Maybe that's normal towards the end of the book, 4,000 words, 5,000 words. But, back in here where I got nothing on that day because I was driving all day, 2,900 words, 513 words, 2,400 words. This is a far more normal pace. And it takes days like this to set up days like this, to set up days like this, okay? What we do as creative people is not something that we can sustain surge ops indefinitely. Nobody can sustain surge ops indefinitely. That's, that's a lesson I learned during my military career. You've got to take breaks. You've got to take rests. You've got to take the time to reconstitute your creative arsenal so that you can go forward and make new things. So anyway, this was sort of what kept me going during Nano. It was a big part of why I was able to be successful and finish 2 books because we finished. Let me talk about that too. Back on the 12th, I think I mentioned. You see, I didn't even mark my sprints. But back on the 12th, we finished Daughter, right? Because I was writing the end of it, and I wrote about 3,500 words. So, yeah, it's really good stuff. Anyway, I'm going to kill this, and I will see you back on the camera. Okay, so back with you a little later in the evening. But I hope you enjoyed that look at kind of my NaNoWriMo journey. This month this year, and how I tracked my words and what some of the factors were that I really feel contributed to my success. Quick recap of what those were. Number one, I was at a great place in my two works in progress to do NaNoWriMo, right? I was within 50,000 words of the end of the book on two books, and just really feeling motivated and ready to get in there and get it done. So all of that came together beautifully for me. The second thing was having a realistic plan. So once again, check out Sarah's content on her Heart Breathings channel. She talks about this quite a bit, but really looking at my life, looking at the things that I had going on this month, and taking into account the fact that I could not sit down and write every single day. So what could I do, and how was I going to manage that was a big game changer. And then the third thing was the community aspect of it. Sprinting with friends, sprinting with the Heart Breathings writing community online, just feeling that sort of shared energy of, hey, let's focus, let's get some words, let's cheer each other on. That really did make a difference for me, for these projects and stuff. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you're doing NaNoWriMo and how it's going, how you're feeling. Let me know if you're feeling like you're going to get to 50,000 words, or if you feel like maybe, you need to change your goal. And if you do, that's great. That's, all words are good words, right? So, even if you don't end up keeping them, at least you know which words you don't want. But anyway, the point is, congrats to you for even, sitting down and taking the challenge, or just working on whatever it is that you're working on, because that's something to be celebrated too. All right. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would love if you would give me that Chuck Yeager thumbs up, and consider subscribing if you feel like it. And yeah, I will see you next time. I'm Casey Zell, and this is my writer life.